Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Father's Day virtual chocolate tasting. We are so glad to see you here again tonight. And as always, we're seeing a large amount of you coming in from the West Coast and from the West Coast, and a few of you scattered across the country. So thank you for that. We always appreciate having you on board. Tonight is our Father's Day tasting, as I mentioned, and we just wanted to give a shout out to all the dads on the phone. I know my father's on the line zooming in from Mississippi, so happy Father's Day, Dad. And happy Father's Day to all the rest of you out there that none of us can be with at the moment due to the situation going on across the country. So my name is Lisa Vanderson. I will be your host tonight. And I had just a couple of quick things to talk about from a housekeeping perspective before we get started. We would love to take questions from you if you have any tonight. As you know, if you've done our experience in person in Las Vegas or in Glendale, California, you know that it's quite a fun experience and that it's really interactive. Unfortunately, since none of us are seeing each other tonight, it's a little bit different, and we look forward to just navigating those waters with you. The first thing is questions are always welcomed, and if you have any, we would encourage those and asking you to use the Q&A button down below instead of the raise hand or chat function. There's just 3 of us on the line tonight running this show. It's me at my house in Vegas, Mark Mackey at his house in Vegas, who's our chief chocolatier, and Stu Hawk, who's our chief data technology whiz. He's running it from his home. So there's just the 3 of us. We're doing our best to keep this moving. We'll just ask for your patience and use the Q&A button if you have any questions. Also, since we can't see you or hear you tonight, if you are doing this and posting pictures on social media, we'd love to take a look. If you can tag us at Ethel M Chocolates or hashtag Ethel M Chocolates, we would love to be able to see the fun that you're having tonight. And then finally, a lot of you have been asking about us and asking if we're going to continue to do these even when social distancing and those sorts of things are lifted. So the good news is, yes, we are. We're going to continue all of these. We have a calendar built out all the way through September. The sort of not so good news, though, is that we don't have them up yet for purchase, but they're going to get up very, very soon. So if you visit ethelm.com and sign up for our emails, you can be the first to know about the next tasting, which I believe is in early July around the 4th of July holiday weekend. And then, like I said, we have several of these planned throughout September right now, and we will be getting those up for purchase within the next week or so. So check it out and look for more fun to come. All right, so if you've done this with us before, I always like to take a few minutes just to give you some fun facts about Ethel M and how we were started. So we were founded in 1981 by Forrest Mars Sr. And there's a portrait of him in the upper left-hand corner. Forrest Mars Sr. retired from the M&M Mars company that he founded with his father, Frank Mars. And upon that retirement, he decided he wanted to move west to have more space, more land, and better climate. So Forrest settled in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside of Las Vegas, bought some land, and as you can see from the center picture, built what is now our beautiful factory store and a factory right there on land with his apartment upstairs. He was so interested in starting a chocolate company that paid homage to his mother and the recipes that he and his mother made as a child when he was growing up in Tacoma, Washington. So bought this land, opened the factory, took care of everything, made sure that everything was being made just like they were back in the day. No artificial preservatives, the best ingredients, and all made by hand. And it's still the way we do things today. He also was an avid gardener, and as you can see, you'll see the cacti there. We have over 3 acres of botanical cactus garden, and with over 300 species of Southwest plants throughout the garden. It's really quite spectacular. If you've been here, you know. If you haven't, we would highly encourage you to stop by. It's well worth coming out. If you're on the Strip, making a trip out just to see the garden. It's free and open to the public always, and it's just something neat and different to do if you're out this way. Also at the holidays, so in November and December, we light up the garden with over 1 million LED lights for the holidays. So the picture in the bottom center you can see here, this is quite an attraction. We've done it for over 25 years and we're going to continue to do it again this year. A little bit of difference this year though with COVID and social distancing, but we're still going to do it. And again, free and open to the public, and would ask you to really think about it. If you're in the area, come out and check it out. It's also become so popular that the picture on the right is a picture of a tank. If you've ever watched the show Tanked on Animal Planet, those gentlemen here in town that have the company, they loved Ethel so much that they asked if they could come out and build us a tank for the holidays a couple of years ago. And then of course feature us on their TV show. So if you're ever bored, hit YouTube up and Google Tanked Ethel chocolates, and you can see the beautiful tank they built for us with the glowfish, which was quite a sight and drew a lot of visitors out that year. And then finally, the picture in the lower left-hand corner shows you our solar garden. So sustainability is a very important key factor for all of us here at Mars. And one of the key beliefs we have is that the world we want tomorrow starts with the business we're doing today. So we were fortunate enough to have this 4-acre solar garden that Forrest had secured and we built upon. And that solar garden can collect enough energy from the sunshine out here to power our factory every day during peak production hours. So the best news is that you're not only eating a delicious chocolate, but you're eating a chocolate that's doing good for the environment too. All right, guys, so with that in mind, I'm going to turn this over to Mark. I know he's really what you're here for, to taste some chocolates. Mark is our chief chocolatier, as I mentioned before. He comes to us from the Culinary Institute of America in New York City and holds the US and international patents for his work on improvements to the texture and shelf life of chocolate. So pretty cool. So with that said, sit back, relax. If you don't have beer, I know a few of you have asked questions, no worries at all. I would recommend a glass of water though, just to cleanse your palate in between pieces. If you have wine, if you have soda, whatever it is, that's great too. But sit back, relax, and have fun.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing tonight? Mark Mackey, and I'm back with you all and really excited to be here for our 5th virtual chocolate tasting tonight. Tonight we're celebrating all of our fathers out there, and we thought we'd do things a little different, where instead of having an optional pairing with wine, we've actually selected 6 different beers that we'll be pairing and tasting along with the chocolates tonight. So I'm very excited to share with you my recommendations, and also excited to hear about what you're tasting out there as well. So feel free, if you'd like, along tonight with your questions, go ahead and type out any comments you have, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the tasting tonight. All right. So during our tasting tonight, we're going to be really doing more than just eating chocolate and drinking beer. We're actually going to be learning about where chocolate comes from, you know, how that cocoa bean, where the chocolate actually comes from, like how the journey that takes from the pod to get processed into the delicious pieces that you see in front of you. And you know, we're going to be looking at the appearance of the pieces. We're going to be smelling them, getting the aroma, tasting them, getting the texture, and thinking about the aftertaste and kind of that lingering effect that a lot of chocolates will have for, you know, 5 to 10 minutes after enjoying each one. So why don't we get started right off the bat here? Let's pick up this piece right here out of your box. Take a look. Looks like it's a nice square piece here, covered in our delicious creamy milk chocolate. It's got some salt on top. That's actually gray sea salt from Brittany, France, and it gets that gray color from the clay where the salt actually crystallizes in the bay there in Brittany. Bring it up to our nose. Let's just smell. Kind of bring our hand around here to see, trap some of those aromas. Sometimes I like to rub the side a little bit, kind of activate some of those aroma compounds. Bring it back up to your nose. You should be getting some caramel notes, maybe some roasted cocoa, caramelized milk, a little bit of butter and cream. Now, when we taste for this one, what I like to do actually is turn the piece upside down. So you see the salt there on the bottom. Let's eat it this way. So I'm going to take a bite and kind of just let the salt sit there on my tongue, and it's going to melt a little bit and really provide a little salinity and enhance some of those flavors that we're going to be tasting in the piece. So let's go ahead and do that. Take a bite. shave half. And just let the piece kind of sit. You're going to taste that saltiness. Take your tongue, kind of start rubbing it up against the roof of your mouth. It's going to start melting that delicious chocolate. You're going to get some of the creaminess, the milky notes coming from the milk, roasted cocoa, and that caramel is going to come in really nicely. Chewy. Going to provide some background, some cream, some butter, a little vanilla as well. Now, let's go ahead and grab our first beer here. So for this piece, we've selected, there are a few that really would work quite nicely, but something like a blonde ale, maybe a Hefeweizen or a Pilsner. I have a beer here from the great state of Nevada, a local Las Vegas beer from Craft House. It's called Silver State, and it's a blonde ale, very clean, very crisp. Not too heavy, not too strong. We don't want to overpower the chocolate. Really nice crisp notes, maybe a little bit of caramel I'm tasting or smelling in that. Take a sip, very clean, crisp, some of those malty notes coming through a little bit. And then maybe, like I said, a little bit of caramel I taste kind of in the background. Take another bite of your sea salt caramel. Kind of think about, how are the flavors changing? How is that a little bit of alcohol, that crispness from the malt and the hops, kind of changing the flavors in your mouth? Now, if you're not a beer drinker, that's totally okay. As we've had before, really a jammy, juicy red wine, something like a Pinot Noir or a Zinfandel, even something called a Brachetto di Acqui, which is a lightly sparkling red wine, would work really nicely with all these pieces tonight. That's a little lower alcohol too, so it's great to enjoy with friends, and it has a great little frizzy. It's actually called frizzante, but it adds a little bit of effervescence, which you can enhance the flavor as well. All right, go ahead and take another sip of another sip of beer, maybe a bite of chocolate if you'd like. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be looking at tonight during our tasting. So hopefully you all have your placemat, and down on the placemat you'll see a nice little flavor wheel where you'll see all of the aromas and the flavors that we're going to be tasting, not just in the chocolate, but actually in the beer as well. You might see some notes there that you're familiar with, and some, for chocolate and things that you've tasted in the past. And, we'll be looking down at this wheel for each piece. So, if you're capturing something that's a little bit different than your neighbor, that's totally okay. All of our tastes are in fact a little bit different. But go ahead and take notes if you'd like, the sight, the appearance of the piece, the aroma, the taste, the texture, the finish, the aftertaste. You can capture those on your placemat. And now what I'd like to do, while we kind of let that first piece kind of settle a little bit, let our palate refresh slightly, I'm going to talk a little bit about where chocolate comes from. So cocoa actually starts out, or the cocoa bean is where chocolate comes from. The cocoa bean grows inside of a cocoa pod. And that cocoa pod only grows about 20 degrees north and south of the equator. It really requires, a very tropical, humid, hot environment in which to thrive. And our Ethel chocolates are actually comprised of very special beans that come to us from Brazil, Ecuador, and West Africa. And I actually have a fresh cocoa pod right here. This is a pod from Ecuador. It's of the Nacional variety. And you can see how beautiful this looks here. See all those beautiful colors, the orange, the red. Excellent. And so now, I think what we'll do, we'll share a quick video with you all to kind of give you a little bit more of an insight into the harvesting process, how the pods are harvested from the trees and cut open to reveal the cocoa beans inside. You can see here, the pods are growing not just on the branches of the tree, but on the trunk as well. It's really, really unique, being that the cocoa pod is actually the fruit of the cocoa plant, cocoa tree. You can see there the farmers are cutting open the pods to extract those delicious cocoa beans inside. And then they're being kind of fermented and sun-dried. And here I've actually got a cocoa pod that I just cut this in half, and you can see all of those beans inside. See how thick that hull is to protect those beans. But it's kind of interesting, a little weird looking, right? But these are all beans you can see inside, covered by this white pulp. And while we have a minute, why don't we take a quick poll and actually have you guys guess, what is the average number of cocoa beans in one cocoa pod? You might be able to count. Go ahead, and if you'd like to capture your answer there. And the answer is 40, actually, 40 beans. And so, you know, a lot of pods are actually a little larger, some are a little smaller. So on average, you do get about 40 beans in each pod. So very, very good for those of you that got that right. And set this down here. All right, so if we go back to getting those beans out of the cocoa pod there. So the farmer, he's going to scoop all those beans, kind of pile those up, and you'll notice that pulp that's on the outside, that's really sweet, really acidic actually, and it provides a really great environment for the next stage in the process, which is going to develop a lot of very intricate, nuanced flavors, fruity and floral notes in the cocoa. And that process is called fermentation. So you might be familiar with that. So similar to how we're fermenting sugars into alcohol in these delicious beers that we're tasting tonight, we're going to do the same thing with cocoa bean. So we're actually going to take that pulp, that sweet acidic pulp, and ferment that. And what that's going to do is drive flavor change in the cocoa beans. That takes about 6 to 7 days. And then afterwards, we're going to want to sun dry those beans out. You know, we don't want any excess moisture to remain on them when we buy them. So we want to dry those out, and they'll dry out for a few days on big tables, big platforms, and dry kind of out in the sun, in the natural environment. And that's typically when we would receive them into the United States for the next stage in chocolate making. But before we get there, why don't we jump back over to our next piece of chocolate. Very excited about this one. This is our milk chocolate peanut butter piece right there. You can see by its nice and glossy peanut shape. This is a mold that we made. We actually engraved the mold to look like a peanut. And the center of this piece is delicious. It's really just plain and simple peanut butter. We take fresh roasted peanuts in our factory. We grind them fresh. We add a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, just to kind of round that peanut butter flavor out a little bit. And then we deposit it in the mold with our creamy milk chocolate. And that's it. You know, it's very simple, recipe for that piece, but the flavor and the aroma that I think you'll gather in a second here is really second to none. And for this piece, we've got a few recommendations here. Something like a porter, an Irish stout, milk stout would work really nicely. But for me, I'm a little more adventurous for this one. I'm gonna try this beer right here. This some of you may be familiar with. from Abita Brewing in New Orleans. It's called Purple Haze, and it's a raspberry lager. So it's brewed with raspberries, and that's going to provide a nice jammy, juicy note in the background, and almost give us maybe like a little bit of a peanut butter and jelly type of experience with our peanut butter piece and our raspberry beer. So let's go ahead and pick that piece back up. All right, now let's bring it up to our nose. And you should be able to get that really nice, really like fragrant peanut butter. That roasted peanut should be coming right through. Those fresh peanuts that we grind in our factory. Let's go ahead and take a bite. Right away, that roasted peanut butter coats your tongue. And the milk chocolate's gonna melt really nicely, provide a really rich, milky background, roasted cocoa again, a little bit of caramel maybe, vanilla. Might get a little bit of woodiness too from the peanuts. Let's go ahead and take a sip of our beer. Yeah, it's really nice. So the raspberry, it's not too overpowering. It's probably 4.5 to 5%, but it really gives a nice background and a little bit of that fruitiness that I described. Really enhances the peanut butter experience. If you haven't, go ahead and take another bite. Maybe take another sip of beer. That's really good. Hopefully you all are enjoying that piece as well. And go ahead and capture any notes that you'd like to for this piece, and we'll move on to celebrating some birthdays, I think. Mary Olson, happy 69th birthday. Barbara in Las Vegas, happy birthday to you. Hope you have a wonderful night. And Larry Shantz, happy birthday and happy Father's Day to you too. Tom Peters, happy birthday to you. Go ahead and cheers you all with my Purple Haze. Hope you're enjoying your evening and the weekend to come here. All right, go ahead and capture any notes on the last piece that you'd like, and we'll move right along here. This piece right here, this is our milk chocolate almond butter crisp. It's colored in this copper, really bright, shiny copper foil here. So let's go ahead and unwrap the foil. We're going to see what's under here. Okay, got some chopped almonds on the outside. These are actually blanched almonds, so they're not roasted. And the reason for that is we actually have two different almonds in this piece. This almond here, which is the blanched almond, and then in the inside we have a roasted almond. So this blanch is going to give us a really nice buttery quality, really buttery flavor. And the roasted is going to provide a little more complexity, some bitter notes coming in, a little more of that roasted, like a little roasted wood flavor as well. And the way that we make this piece, this is kind of a traditional toffee. And we're going to take our sugar and our butter, and we're going to put those in our copper kettles in our kitchen. And we're going to heat all of that up to about 300 degrees. And then we're going to take that and we're going to blend in our almonds. And they're going to kind of oil roast right in that toffee. And then we're going to take that toffee and pour it out onto our cooling tables and get that to cool just perfectly. And then cut it into these little square shapes. And then we're going to take each piece and we're going to drench it in our delicious creamy milk chocolate. Just a very, very thin layer of milk chocolate there. Just enough to roll it in these blanched almond pieces. You see all those almond pieces are sticking to that milk chocolate there. All right, so this is a nice a roasted almond, blanched almond toffee with a little bit of milk chocolate. And for this piece, you know, there's really, you know, a lot of beers that would work quite well. Brown ale, something like a Newcastle, a red ale, a honey ale, or a honey kolsch. This is another beer here from Rogue in Oregon that works really well. But I'm going to try something a little different. I've got also from Rogue, a hazelnut brown, I call it hazelnut brown nectar, but it's a hazelnut brown beer. And from Rogue in Oregon. It's got a really strong hazelnut complex note coming in there. Really nice. All right. Let's go ahead and pick up our almond butter crisp here. Smell that buttery, those buttery almonds. Really a little different than like a roasted almond that you might have tasted before. Let's take a bite. That snap. See those roasted almonds inside the toffee. Give it a few bites. You get those complex, bitter, caramelized sugar notes coming through. Nuttiness, almonds, getting more of that roasted almond quality, a little woodiness from that. Little bit of milk chocolate, a little bit of creaminess, cocoa notes coming through, but not too much. You know, we really want to focus on the toffee for this piece. So just a little bit of milk chocolate. Let's go ahead and pick up our beer. Take a sip. Yeah, the hazelnut's really nice. It actually has a little bit of that. So hazelnuts are a little more of a stronger, I think, aromatic nut. But with this, it balances really nicely with those almonds and that caramelized sugar in the toffee. Balances the sweetness as well. It's really quite nice. Hopefully you all are enjoying your beer with that one. And if you'd like, if you need me to re-show or re-display the beers, we can do that at the end as well if there's one that you missed. All right. Why don't we take a moment and we'll cross over into the dark side of chocolates with our dark chocolate lemon satin cream. That's going to be this piece right here. Really nice. See that gloss, that shine. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, just after this. But notice that, you know, this is a molded piece. You can see that nice engraving of a lemon leaf there on top. So this starts out the same way that our satin creams start out. So we take sugar, cream, we heat them up together, and then to about 235 degrees, and then we bring that all down. We put that in our cream beater and it cools perfectly down to about body temperature, about 98, 99 degrees. And that's when we're gonna add our lemon puree. And the reason for that, we wanna get that mixture really cooled down and add the lemon at the last possible moment to really keep and capture all those complex notes that are in lemon. We don't want to cook anything off. We want to maintain as much of that brightness and freshness as we can. So we're going to blend all that together at the very last moment. And then we'll add a touch of vanilla and a little salt. And then we're going to deposit it together with the dark chocolate that you see here into the mold. Let that set up perfectly. And that's going to form the piece. This is one of our original Ethel classic, we call our classic recipes, our classic 16 that we launched with back in the early 80s. So we're really excited to include it in the tasting tonight. It's one of my favorite pieces. And for this one, we've selected, this is actually my father and I, one of our favorite beers. The next two that we taste will be our favorites. But for this piece, you know, really any Belgian blonde, Belgian golden ale is going to work really, really nicely. Something like Duvel, you see here. Goose Island makes a few. They make one called Matilda. It's a farmhouse style. But I'm going to be tasting actually their other. It's called Sophie. It's one of my favorite beers that Goose Island makes. It's a Belgian style, and it has some citrus notes in the form of orange, bright citrus notes there, and a little bit of white pepper that are going to add a little complexity and kind of balance the tartness in the lemon satin cream and some of the bitterness coming from the dark chocolate. So we'll get to that in a second. Let's go ahead and pick up the piece here. Bring it up to our nose. Take a deep breath. Notice that really dark, that deep, rich, dark chocolate aroma coming through. Almost get a little coffee as well, and some espresso coming from those deeply dark roasted coffee or cocoa beans, similar to coffee actually, that we'll talk about in a second. But see if you pick those up, and then see if you can pick up maybe a little bit of citrus or orange coming through a little bit, or maybe some of the lemon. We add a little bit of orange oil to our dark chocolate to help separate it. It makes it a little unique from others that you may have tried. So it's very, very faint. So not all that, you can't always pick it up, but it's really nice. It adds a nice note there, differentiator. Let's go ahead and take a bite and listen for a snap. Yeah, snap inside there. Tart, really tart lemon, kind of puckers your mouth a little bit. Kind of use your tongue, rub the piece up against the roof of your mouth. It's going to take a little longer for this than some of the last milk chocolate pieces. But then that dark chocolate's going to melt. Really cut that lemon really, really well. That tartness that was kind of all over, dark comes in and really cuts it, really balances that out quite nicely. Here's some of those darker cocoa notes, the coffee notes that we talked about coming through. Some vanilla, maybe a little bit of bitterness too in the back of your throat. Let's go ahead and take a sip of beer. Go back to our piece, take another bite. That's really nice. So the white pepper really kind of adds a little hint of spiciness to that dark chocolate. It's nice. Now with this piece, another option too, if you're not a beer drinker, dry red, a sweet sparkling one that I mentioned, that Brachetto d'Acqui, but also something that's out there. It's called a late harvest Zinfandel, and what that is basically Zinfandel grape that's been allowed to sit on the vine for kind of past harvest. And what that does is converts more of those starches to sugars. So the wine that's made with the grape is actually going to be naturally just sweeter than a typical Zinfandel would be. They're typically called late harvest Zinfandel. There's also types of wine you can buy that are affected by something called botrytis, and that kind of naturally raisinates the grape and actually intensifies sweetness as well. And either of those would be great to pair with this, and actually any of our dark chocolate pieces. Right, I think capture last few notes that you'd like to on that one. And I think we have some more anniversaries and engagements to celebrate. Lucille and Frank, happy 39th anniversary. Sandy and Mike in Bay City, congratulations on your engagement. Lauren and Kat, recently engaged to be married, congratulations. Hope you all have a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend. Cheers to you. All right, so let's take a quick break, give our taste buds a few minutes to kind of refresh. Our next two pieces and beers are going to be a little more intense, so we want to kind of prepare them, let them kind of chill for a sec. All right, so to go back to where we left our beans in the cocoa chocolate making process, they were getting a little bit of a suntan. So we're going to take those now and we're going to want to inspect them. And the way that we do that is we put them in this little box here that has little slots for each of the beans. And what that's going to do, we're going to close that, and it's actually going to, we put a knife, we actually cut through and slice each bean in half. And what we're looking for is proper fermentation. And what does that look like? Well, look at that second photo there. You see there's two different beans that have been cut in half. The beans on the left have been properly and evenly fermented. You can see a really even brown coloration throughout. And the beans on the right have not been properly fermented. Those are, you can see, still a little purple looking. They would need to be probably fermented longer. We wouldn't want to use those in our FLM chocolate because they wouldn't have the nuances and the flavors that we really need from that fermentation process. So once the beans are fermented, they're going to get bagged up and they're going to get sent to us at our facility, FLM Mars facility in Pennsylvania. And there we're going to roast the beans. So very similar to how coffee is roasted to different levels of roast, light, medium, dark. We're going to do the same thing with our cocoa beans depending on the finished chocolate recipe or specification that we're going to be preparing. So those beans you can see here, they're getting roasted. And once they complete the roast, they look just like this. Hopefully you guys can see here. See that? All right, I'm going to pick one up here and just show you. And you see here, that's the bean. And then on the inside, it's covered by this skin, which after it's roasted comes off pretty easily. This skin really doesn't do much for us. We don't really use it. We'll throw that away. But what's left inside is right here. This is called the cocoa nib. And this is what we're going to use to make chocolate. This will actually break up really easily. You can see just I barely touched it and it kind of broke up in my hand. But here's a bowl of them that I've got. So these are basically just cocoa beans that have been shelled and kind of just not really chopped, but they kind of just fall apart on their own there. And these are the cocoa nibs, and they're really great. They're they're really chocolate in its purest form, and you can buy them, you can add them on salads, different things. Adds a nice cocoa textural note to your desserts or dinner even. I like them in a salad sometimes, but that's really the building block for chocolate. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those nibs and we're going to grind them down. And because the nib actually contains about 50% fat, cocoa butter, when we grind those down, they're going to liquefy. And that's when we're going to add in our other ingredients to make chocolate. So if we're making a milk chocolate, we'll add some milk, some sugar, some vanilla. If we're making a dark, we might add a little bit of milk, but we want to keep more of that cocoa nib or cocoa solid in the chocolate. A little bit of sugar, vanilla, but depending on the specific recipe, that will determine which ingredients we add at this stage. But we're going to grind everything down, get everything down into a really silky smooth particle size in our mouth. So when we taste it, it's really nice and smooth. And then we're going to have what looks like finished chocolate, but it's not going to be done quite yet. We still have to do something called tempering. So chocolate is a really unique ingredient in that when you heat it, you can't just heat it and mold it and expect it to come out looking beautiful. You have to temper it. So you have to treat it very carefully. You have to heat it up and cool it down for under a very specific curve, melting curve and cooling curve, time and temperature to actually get the structure, the crystals, the cocoa butter crystals that are in the chocolate to set up. So when they will firm up, they will be really stable and will give us a beautiful glossy appearance here on our piece. If the chocolate is not properly tempered, what will happen is it'll set up and it'll look really kind of hazy or dull, and it'll look like almost like it's got a layer of something over the top. And what that is actually cocoa butter that's risen through the chocolate and come to the surface. So you can actually, it's not the most appealing thing. It doesn't look very good, and it doesn't melts really quickly. It doesn't have all the qualities you're looking for, but you can kind of rub off that cocoa butter that's on the top and feel it. It's really kind of oily, but that's what that is. But anyway, we want to temper it, so we want to get it to be very stable and set up really nice and glossy and have all the characteristics that we expect from premium chocolate. And at that point, now we're done. Now we can either mold with it, put it into our molds, deposit it with our center into molds, or we can enrobe with it. Here you see a picture of some of our vanilla satin creams that have been extruded into that little round shape, and they're going through a chocolate waterfall there. A little waterfall of chocolate are going to get completely covered in chocolate, and then we have a little fan that blows off the excess, and then those pieces will transfer to our cooling belts and set up perfectly. Some of them might get a little drizzle of chocolate, and they'll set up ready for you to enjoy. And that's pretty much it. That's all of most of the steps, or all of the steps for making chocolate. I think we have a few more sweet moments to celebrate here. Ben Matthew, happy 10th Father's Day and 41st birthday on the 24th. Dean Mills, happy Father's Day from your kids and your grandkids. And Dan Emfinger, happy Father's Day. Cheers to all of you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Right, let's move right along to our next piece of chocolate. This guy right here. This is our dark chocolate espresso truffle. You can see it's covered in a really nice powdery cocoa butter coating there. So for this piece, we're actually going to start with a traditional chocolate ganache. So ganache is really an emulsification or a mixture of cream and chocolate. And so we're going to take our cream and we're going to heat it up, and we're going to add espresso. So we're going to take our espresso, fresh roasted espresso beans, we're going to grind them up, and we're going to let them steep in the hot cream and kind of emulsify that flavor, or steep that flavor into the cream. So that takes a couple hours to achieve, and we heat it up to get more of that espresso flavor extracted into the cream. And then we're going to strain all the beans out. We don't want any espresso, any grinds or granules in our ganache. So we're going to strain all that out, and then we're going to heat it up again and pour it over our dark chocolate and melt everything together beautifully. We're going to blend it together really nicely and carefully and make that espresso ganache. And we're going to take that and we're going to actually mold it, and we're going to let it kind of set up slightly. It's going to start to get set up, from the chocolate. And once it becomes kind of semi-soft or semi-solid, we're going to mold it into a round shape. And we're going to actually hand roll in tempered dark chocolate and our roasted cocoa powder right here that you see. And what the cocoa powder is going to do is give us a little bit of bitterness and some of that intense cocoa right off the bat. and it's going to actually give us a little bit of a jump on the really strong espresso flavor that we're going to taste. It's going to give us that background, really nice richness there. So let's actually, before we get the aroma of this piece, let's talk about the pairing. So for this piece, we've paired a couple different beers. Really any stout's going to work pretty well, I think. An American stout, Irish stout, imperial stout, an aged imperial stout, they're all going to really provide a lot of great flavor, background notes for this piece. This is espresso truffle is a very strong piece. Espresso flavor is very prominent. So we need something that's going to have a backbone to kind of hold up and support that truffle and really kind of play with it. So what I have here, this is a barrel-aged imperial stout from Deschutes Brewery in Oregon. This is called the Abyss. So this is actually my father and I, one of our favorite beers that we enjoy. And one thing about imperial stouts, kind of a tip there is, you don't typically want to drink this right out of the refrigerator. You want to have it at about 50 degrees. And because this is an aged beer, in barrels and oak typically, you want those notes to kind of come out. If the beer's too cold, you won't taste those flavors as well. So bring it out, maybe 20, 30 minutes before, kind of let it chill, and it'll be ready to enjoy at about 50 degrees is the perfect temperature, I think. All right, so let's go ahead back to our truffle here. Bring it up to our nose. Be careful when you're smelling. You don't want to get too much of that cocoa powder up your nose. Won't be very pleasant, but to get a little bit there. Strong cocoa. Take a bite. It's that ganache center. And right away, again, that really intense cocoa bitterness. Really strong espresso flavor, first and foremost, prominent. Really, really smooth. Dark chocolate's going to melt, provide a little more bitterness there, background to that. Let's look at this is the Abyss here, Imperial Stout. Got a lot of aroma of black licorice, some molasses. Take a sip. Yeah, this is a little stronger in alcohol as well. This is, I think, like 10%. But, again, a lot of flavor. This is actually aged in 3 different oak barrels. It's aged in wine barrels, oak barrels that were actually used to make wine, oak barrels that were used to make bourbon, and then fresh oak as well. It's about a third of each. But yeah, it's 8%. That's what it is. But a lot of great black licorice notes, molasses, some spice, a little cherry. And this one, if you've got this aged, barrel aged imperial, this is where you're going to get some of those leather notes, maybe some tobacco, some of those really deep, kind of rich, earthy notes and flavors that you might find in bourbon, in some wine as well. That's where that's coming from. Go back and take another bite if you'd like to. I think this is my favorite pairing so far. I think some of you I saw in the comments really enjoyed this as well. Yeah, but you want, whatever beer you choose, you need something to kind of stand up to that espresso. Think about how the flavors are changing a little bit in your mouth. Can capture any notes there. Some others that would work, as well. We have another beer by Deschutes, Obsidian Stout. Craft House, the local beer brewery in Vegas, they have something called a Bellegarde coffee stout that would work quite nicely as well. Okay. And now we'll move on to our last piece, but you know, maybe the last piece, but it's actually the most labor intensive of all of our FLM pieces. And that is our dark chocolate Remy Martin XO Cognac Truffle. A lot of words, but it has a lot of flavor. And you know, this is one of my favorite pieces that I developed for FLM. And you know, it starts out, you know, very similar to how we started with the last piece. So we have a traditional ganache that we're going to make with cream, but instead of adding espresso, we're going to add Remy Martin XO Cognac. So this is cognac that's been aged in oak barrels for 30 years, French oak barrels or oak casks. And we're going to blend that cognac into the dark chocolate. And that's it. We'll add a little bit of salt, maybe a touch of vanilla, but that's it. And then we're going to take that ganache and we're going to mold it using a very, very special process at FLM called shell molding. And what that's going to do is give us a paper thin shell over that piece, because we really just want a touch of dark chocolate and really want that cognac and that dark chocolate ganache to really shine. So we're going to get that paper thin shell over the top, and then our skilled FLM chocolatiers or artisans are going to paint the top of each piece with colored cocoa butter. So they'll actually get paintbrushes, and we're actually going to temper that colored cocoa butter and paint each and every piece. So you'll notice, if you've got a couple, you'll notice each piece is going to look a little bit differently, or look a little bit different because they're hand painted. And with this piece, you know, again, really a lot of Irish oatmeal stouts, milk stouts would work nicely, but you know, what I prefer is something that's a little lighter in alcohol. You know, there is alcohol in this piece, so we don't want to overpower it with too much alcohol. So I'm actually drinking just traditional Guinness Irish stout. Has a lot of malty chocolate notes that are going to, you know, really kind of provide a background and kind of be in a supporting role, I think, for this pairing. We really want that chocolate and that cognac to shine, but this will provide a nice balance and background as well. So go ahead and pick it up. Smell. Cocoa. Again, some of those coffee or espresso notes. Let's take a bite. You can see that like paper thin shell. It's probably hard to see on the screen, but you can see it in front of you. Very, very soft. Melts in your mouth center. First you get that cognac, kind of woodiness coming through. Cocoa, chocolate, cream, and then the chocolate shell or the cap will melt a little bit and kind of provide a little more richness. Let's go ahead and take a sip of our beer here. Go back and take another bite of the truffle. I don't know, this might be my new favorite pairing. But it's really nice, a little bit of that maltiness from the Guinness really kind of, I think, accentuates flavor in the chocolate and the cognac as well. Malty sweetness, hoppy bitterness. And that's really nice. Hopefully you all enjoyed your pairing as well. I see somebody wrote something about the Abyss. I'll go back and check that out later. Yeah, it's one of my favorite beers. Yeah, so capture any final notes that you'd like to on that piece. Got a couple other options here as well. There's a Goose Island Bourbon County Stout, so another aged imperial. Has, again, a little stronger in alcohol. For me, I actually prefer the Guinness, but that's something a little more experimental if you'd like. Oatmeal stouts work quite nicely as well. Founders has a delicious breakfast stout. I couldn't actually find it. I was going to choose that one too, but I couldn't find it here locally. But those of you in the Midwest can probably find that. It's a Michigan beer, I believe. So yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed the tasting tonight. Things were a little different. We had 6 different beers. Hopefully everybody had something delicious to taste and enjoy in front of them tonight to pair with the chocolate. And I think now what we'll do is maybe take a quick poll and get a feel for how you guys thought or what you thought of the pieces. Which was your favorite piece, and maybe pairing as well. Go ahead and cast your votes there. All right. Give it another second for the voting to calculate. Go back to the Abyss, I think, here. Yeah, this is, if you have a chance to try this, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a pretty unique aroma. It's very, very strong, very molasses, and now that it's been sitting for, see how dark and luxurious that looks. All right, let's see if we have our winner, and oh, it's pretty close. We've got, looks like lemon satin cream beat out all the pieces. We had, next up was the cognac truffle, and then tied for third was the almond butter crisp and the sea salt caramel. Excellent. Looks like everybody enjoyed the pairings as well. Wonderful. And again, I mean, these were kind of what I for my taste and my what I thought would work well. But I would love to hear about what beers you chose and you picked, to potentially try in the future as well. So if you want to capture any of those, I'd be happy to read them a little bit later tonight. But for now, I think we will wrap up, maybe answer some questions, and we have a coupon code for all of you to use tonight on the website to maybe make your own collection with some of these delicious FLM pieces. And I think we might answer some questions.
Great, thanks, Mark. That was so delicious. We do have a couple questions coming in for you.
Sure.
The first one, I feel like this is an ACT question or something. It says, how many cocoa beans are used to make one piece of FLM chocolates?
So that's actually a little bit of a complicated question because we've got different pieces from different weights, but on average, it takes, I would say probably 4 to 5 beans. Well, actually probably more than that because you've got to allow for, a little bit, there's always a little bit of waste. We try not to waste, but there's always a little bit that does. So I would say probably closer to like 7 beans.
All right, excellent. Mark, what are 3 chocolates you recommend for dark chocolate lovers?
For dark chocolate lovers, well, I think the Remy Martin XO Cognac, I think that's got a lot of really great dark chocolate notes. Lemon satin cream that we tried tonight. And I mean, our dark chocolate truffle is great. Dark chocolate on dark chocolate. Also, the dark chocolate satin cream would be another choice. If you like something a little more fudge-like, that satin cream center is a little more fudge-like, and the truffle is a little more soft.
All right. We have another question coming in. What wine do you recommend to drink with truffles?
With truffles. So I would say with like darker milk chocolate truffles, typically I would probably, like I said, a juicy, jammy Pinot Noir, maybe that late harvest Zinfandel that I mentioned earlier. If it's a white chocolate truffle, I would actually try like a Prosecco or a Champagne or Cremant, Cava from Spain. You know, any of those I think would work really nicely. And even like, honestly, like an apple cider or a pear cider, I think could work really well with white as well, white chocolate truffle.
Interesting. Okay, it looks like we have one more here. What happens to the actual cocoa pod once everything from the inside is taken out?
So the pod here, so I mean, cocoa, so actually, these pods that we get in right from Ecuador, you know, I've got to freeze them right away because they will actually start turning colors and starting to go, actually they'll start to kind of go off or rot like relatively quickly. So I have to freeze them. But actually this after, if I let this sit for another day or two, it's going to turn brown and start to turn to mush. So it's not really, I'm not aware of any real use for it. I know like the shells are sometimes used in mulch. They have a lot of different like nutrients and things that the soil can actually pick up. So, but other than that, I'm not aware of any use of the husks, or I guess the hull of the cocoa pod.
Awesome. Okay, a couple shout outs that have come in here on the chat. Kathy and Kevin, we know you guys have done these tastings with us multiple times, so thank you. It is your 20th anniversary on June 21st, so huge kudos to you guys.
Wow, congratulations, guys.
Yeah. Many years of
Cheers.
happiness. Yes. And then there were some other Father's Day shout outs. I'm trying to see if I can call them all out here. Let's see, Victor, happy Father's Day from the Williams family.
Happy Father's Day, Victor.
And one more comment, not a call out, but they just said that your cognac piece is amazing. And what could you possibly even do for an encore? So great job,
Thank
Mark.
you all very much. So that's what I'm very excited about. So I think if you enjoyed that piece, you know, a little later this year, we're going to be introducing some new truffles for all of you. So stay tuned for those. We're really excited to share those with you.
Excellent. All right. I think that is it. Oh, here we got one more. Happy Father's Day to Ed.
Happy Father's Day, Ed.
Happy Father's Day. Yep. Awesome. Well, again, everyone, thank you so much for kicking off your weekend with us. We always love having you. We love your questions. We love the interaction. And like I said, please do stay tuned to ethelm.com for our next round of tastings. And in the meantime, Mark had the coupon code virtual. So if you go to ethelm.com now through Sunday night, if there's anything that you just love and want more of, you can use that promo code virtual and get 20% off with no minimum order. So thank you, everyone. Be safe this weekend, and we hope to see you in July.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy Father's Day.
Bye.